Hello and welcome to the Scoreboard Podcast. I'm your host, Rivka Board of Jets X Factor, the home of the best New York Jets content on the internet. We'll cover all things Jets here, incorporating the analytics you won't find anywhere else. So let's get right into it. Today's Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. We're a few days after the Super Bowl. Off season officially underway. Not really much happening, but there is some Jets news, some things to talk about. First, we want to cover just a few other things. So first of all, the Jets' new uniforms. I'm normally not a uniform person. I don't really discuss or care much about the uniforms. But the thing is that the Jets, this time I'm happy about what they said about the uniforms. They are gonna take those legacy uniforms and the throwbacks and make them a mainstream uniform choice. And I just thought seeing them on opening night last year on that Monday Night Football against the Bills, those uniforms look so sharp. And again against Kansas City on Sunday night, they're really, really nice looking uniforms, and I'm glad they're going to use them. The fact that they dropped them right when the Super Bowl ended is just kind of typical Jets stuff, but I just wanted to give a quick nod to that. Now, in terms of discussing, I wanted to discuss also the Super Bowl because there were a few things that were interesting to me in that game. First of all, I thought that this Super Bowl showed the Jets what could have been, and I know a lot of people looked at it and said, "Oh, the greatness of Patrick Mahomes and how no one else can do what he does and blah blah blah." It sort of disregards the fact that Mahomes didn't necessarily light the scoreboard on fire. Yes, ultimately he led them down on two drives that he did a really excellent job on, and he led them down for a touchdown. But let's not pretend that Mahomes has necessarily, really in any of his Super Bowls, played like, the truly elite Patrick Mahomes that we're used to lauding. He simply finds a way to win, and that's the thing that, if anything, should show the Jets what really can work. Because if you look at it, I was looking at Mahomes' 2023 stats compared to Rodgers' from 2022, and the comparison is a little bit interesting. So first of all, okay, Mahomes completed 67.2% of his passes compared to Rodgers 64.6. So that's a couple, 2.5% difference. There is a difference there. But yards per attempt, Mahomes 7, Rodgers 6.8. Touchdowns to interceptions, Mahomes 27-14, Rodgers 26-12, almost identical. If you trust PFF's big time throw rate, Rodgers was 5.7, whereas Mahomes was 4.0. So Rodgers has the advantage there. Identical turnover-worthy play rate, 2.9%. Mahomes was throwing shorter passes, 6.8. Rodgers was 8.5. You look at their, okay, so Mahomes took a lot more pressure, but many fewer sacks. Pressure to sack percentage was 11.2% compared to Rodgers' 20.4%. But Mahomes took 3.03 seconds to get the ball out, Rodgers 2.67. And their NFL passer ratings 92.6 versus 91.1. A lot of the numbers are very, very similar. This was not a great year for Mahomes. He was middle of the pack with a lot of different things. And so if you think about it, what could this Jets defense have been with just the 22 version of Rodgers, which we admit was not elite, but neither was the 2023 version of Mahomes. That's the thing. And everyone lauds the Kansas City defense. Well, if you think about it, the Jets defense was better than Kansas City's this year. They ranked 3rd overall in DVOA. Chiefs were 7th. They ranked 3rd overall in pass defense DVOA. Chiefs were 5th. They ranked 14th in rush DVOA. Chiefs were 27th. Their defense overall was better than Kansas City's. And so if you're going to say that Mahomes played the way he did and then the defense led them to a championship, what could the Jets have done with just mediocre quarterback play this year? And yes, all the issues they had in receivers, but if you think about it, Mahomes was basically dealing with what? He had Kelsey, Rashee Rice, and a bunch of scrubs. I mean, the Jets really didn't have anything that different. You have to assume Lazard would have been a little bit better with Rodgers under center. Garrett Wilson, Travis Kelce, if you want to compare the two, Garrett Wilson is probably at a higher point in his career right now. Rashee Rice does a lot of the same things that Tyler Conklin does in terms of going over the middle, not being necessarily a deep threat. And Breece Hall is better than Isaiah Pacheco. So if you think about it, yes, the Chiefs' offensive line, especially as a run blocking, was better than the Jets. But if you just put in Aaron Rodgers and had a mediocre offense instead of a bottom basement offense, this Chiefs championship really shows you where the Jets could have been, and it's that much more painful to look at and to think about. Um, so that's one thing. Another thing I wanted to talk about was Kyle Shanahan's decision that's getting killed. His decision to take the ball in overtime. It's funny. It never even occurred to me that Shanahan would decide to kick off, although it did occur to me when they originally changed the rule that would a team defer. I think that Shanahan is getting killed for two main reasons. Number one, in college, where they have this postseason rule that each team gets a possession, they have this rule all the time. And so everyone defers. So that's considered like, how dare you go against the conventional wisdom. But also, I think it fits the narrative of Shanahan is a choker because he's now in a Super Bowl between a coordinator and head coach. He's now relinquished a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl 3 different times and lost. So I think that's one of the reasons that Shanahan is getting killed. Honestly, had he kicked off, Chiefs had scored a touchdown and they hadn't been able to match, he'd be getting killed for that. People would be like, why'd you give Patrick Mahomes the ball coming right after with a tired defense? I think he was between a rock and a hard place. No matter what he chose, he would have been getting criticized. The whole way the NFL set up this choice is that so there should be advantages and disadvantages for each one. The NFL pointed out that one of the advantages of getting the ball first is that you have the opportunity to get the ball third. You're the first team to have that sudden death situation, only needing a field goal. And that's what Shanahan referenced. He said, we wanted to get the ball for third. We figured we could match on the first drive. And honestly, they scored a field goal. Was it so unreasonable to think that their defense could hold Kansas City to a field goal? They had done so for a lot of the game. And, it wasn't as if Mahomes was lighting up the scoreboard. Yes, he had a very good final drive of regulation, but ultimately the 49ers were also playing keep away on that drive. And so, a lot of times scoring a field goal on this kind of situation is not that tough. But scoring a touchdown, yes, Mahomes has done it in the past, but it wasn't as if this version of Mahomes was the same version as of Mahomes that we've seen in the past. And this 49ers defense was really getting after him a lot. So it wasn't an unreasonable decision. What was worse, what I do blame Shanahan for are two different things. Number one, the fact that so many 49ers players were not aware that the rules had even changed is pretty bad. Yes, Shanahan, ultimately I don't think it made any difference. Shanahan knew, he made his decision based on it, but it could have changed the way they were acting on the field. It definitely could have if they thought that, just different things. If not knowing the rule could change the way a player plays on the field. So it's just a bad look. Andy Reid said their players all knew, they had rehearsed it, they knew all the different things. They were going to go down and try to score a touchdown, go for two, win the game if San Francisco had scored a touchdown. But it's just a bad look. The other thing that I don't say that you can kill Shanahan for it, but I think he went back to his conservative nature when maybe he should have gone for it. 4th and 4 from the Chiefs 9, game tied, first possession of overtime. I would have gone for it there. He actually did so earlier in the game. He was very aggressive. Win probability difference was about the same, about 1%. He was down 13-10. Instead of kicking the field goal, he went for it. Same thing Dan Campbell did, except a little bit earlier in the game. He got it. They scored the touchdown, and if not for a bad extra point, that might have been the decision that won the Super Bowl, because if you think about it, the Chiefs would have had to score a touchdown on that final drive. Yes, things would have been different, but ultimately that could have been the Super Bowl winning drive decision. So the fact that in overtime he decided to just kick was a little bit strange to me. At the very worst, even if they didn't get it, the Chiefs would have had to drive, pretty far downfield. Yes, they would have only needed a field goal, but I still thought that San Francisco would have been better off going for it there. I was maybe marginally surprised they didn't, maybe because it was 4th and 4, but I think you could maybe get on Shanahan a little bit more for that. So that's my take on Shanahan's decision. You can check out my article on Jets X Factor about it. I'm not going to kill Shanahan for it. Now, as a Jets, someone who covers the Jets, has been a Jets fan my whole life. When the Jets are out of things, I tend to root for Patrick Mahomes because my rationale is that I've always, from the time I was a young kid actually, always looked at the top quarterbacks in the league and hoped that they would do well so that they would overtake Brady. So I used to root for Peyton Manning. I rooted for Rodgers over the years, even Drew Brees, although he had less of a shot. But some of the quarterbacks that I thought maybe could overtake Brady, especially when he only had those 3 Super Bowls, which if you think about it, he had 3 for, I don't know, 9, 10 years, something like that, 11 years. So, um, you know, that, so I used to root for them. So now Mahomes seems like the best quarterback, the quarterback with the best shot to overtake Brady as the GOAT. And so, um, rooting for Mahomes, if you are someone who hates Brady, I think that just makes sense. Now, I just also wanted to point out this Charvarius Ward Sauce situation. Sauce, after the game, said, "I told you all the Niners might look better on paper, but the Chiefs always find a way." Charvarius Ward responds, "Boy, you never even sniff the playoffs. You're watching from the couch, worry about the sorry Jets. Everybody got something to say about the team in the Super Bowl. Your opinion doesn't need to be heard, kid." Well, the Jets play the 49ers next year, so number 7, Charvarius Ward, X on your back. Hopefully Garrett Wilson can just show you that the first team All-Pro has more of a right to speak about whatever he wants, and you may have been a second team All-Pro, but that doesn't make you the arbiter of who can say what on Twitter. Now, another thing from the Super Bowl, the McCole Hardman narrative, it's one of the stupidest things I ever heard. If you watch the Chiefs just in the championship game, if you watch them the other weeks, Hardman fumbles, nearly cost them the game. In general, I was watching them. I actually couldn't believe, even with the Jets, I couldn't believe how much worse he seemed than with the Chiefs in the past. When he went back to the Chiefs, he was the same way. Fumbled 3 times. He was just a mess with them. He was one of the least efficient receivers in the NFL, and that's when he was on the same team as Allen Lazard for part of the season. The idea that the Jets couldn't find some use for him, Hardman was not worth anything. Remember, Kadarius Toney played that same role last season. Kadarius Toney was inactive for this game. Andy Reid can often, especially with that kind of play calling, can take a sack of potatoes and turn them into a Super Bowl winning receiver. And so, really, the fact it's annoying for the Jets to have to deflect those questions just because he happened to score the touchdown, but the narrative around him was ridiculous. It was a good thing the Jets were able to trade him for something and not just release him. Now we're heading into the off season, and so some of the narratives, we're starting to talk about. We've already been talking about the off season a lot, but one rumor that's swirling is that Brandon Aiyuk may be traded because he's, he wants a new deal. 49ers, they're addressing it, whatever. Rather like the Deebo Samuel situation a few years ago, the Jets almost traded for Deebo. They have Garrett Wilson instead. I think they're probably happy with that trade-off. The biggest problem I have, Aiyuk is a game-changing player, no question about it. I would love to have him. The biggest issue I have with acquiring Aiyuk is that it'll take the first-round pick. It might take more than the first-round pick, and it'll take a big extension. That means you're giving draft capital that you need for offensive line, and you're giving money. There are receivers on the market that are worth giving money to, specifically, obviously, Mike Evans. If he's not available, Calvin Ridley is definitely going to be on the market, and he's someone the Jets should probably go after. Yes, Aiyuk is better than Ridley, but is he a first-round pick and that much more, and $25 million versus 18 better? Especially in the Jets situation? I don't think so. The Jets really need a tackle, so unless they're willing to go out and spend that money for Tyron Smith, Mike Onwenu, and things like that, it as much as getting Aiyuk would be great, and obviously if the Jets did it, ultimately it would greatly improve their team. I think that it would just kill their chance to get the tackle that they need, and so I would pass. I think Calvin Ridley is probably the Jets' best target if they can't get Mike Evans, and so that's where my thought process would be. So that's my take on the receiver position right now. I know this episode is pretty short, but we're gonna stop here. We'll be back with more Jets content. We have obviously the franchise tag situation with Bryce Huff is going to be interesting. Doesn't look like they're going to tag him. Free agency as it starts. We'll be back here covering it all. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for for being a part of the Jets X Factor family. Go to jetsxfactor.com, the home of the best New York Jets content on the internet. Take care and have a great day.